Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Green Flag. I'm your host, Lucas Wacker. With me, as always, we have Kyle Cushman. And in today's episode, we are recapping championship weekend. Better late than never. It's a little bit later in the week, but we wanted to give it a little bit of time to marinate, let everything settle down after what was an exciting championship weekend at Phoenix Raceway to decide a Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and Camping World Truck Series champion, where Kyle Larson, Daniel Hamrick, and Ben Rhodes were all victorious en route to their first respective championships in all three series. So a impressive weekend, and we're going to break it all down here today, just kind of give our thoughts overall of what we thought of each race. And, the main one being the Cup Series one on the Sunday that was actually pretty entertaining compared to the 2020 version that we saw last year. So before we get into breaking all this down, how you doing today, Kyle?
Yeah, doing good. Excited to talk about the weekend of racing that was. A couple of really, really strong races. Didn't have a chance to watch the Truck Series race live, but from watching highlights and stuff like that, it was still a very interesting race throughout, even though the championship battle was for, I think it was third at the end of the day. So a fun weekend of racing here at Phoenix. Phoenix is a good racetrack. I personally don't love the reconfiguration and stuff, but it still showed up to be a great weekend of racing with a couple of championships on the line here.
Definitely. And we'll start off with the Cup Series, Kyle. And speaking of Kyle Larson, what a story this guy was this season. He caps off an historic championship winning season with 10 wins. I believe it was 18 top fives or something crazy in that total. It was a phenomenal achievement, 20 top fives, excuse me. And Kyle Larson, absolutely well-deserving of a championship this season. By far the best car in terms of consistency, race winning speed all season long, and it paid dividends. And it came down to a pit crew being the best all season, and it came down to them being clutch at the right time. A final pit stop launching Kyle Larson from fourth of the championship four up to first for the final restart. And it was all said and done after that. And he nails the final restart and then holds off Martin Truex Jr. in the final laps to hold off and covet a first career Cup Series championship. So Hendrick Motorsports goes back to back in the Phoenix Raceway finales in 2020 and 2021. And this is a massive accomplishment for Kyle Larson, the story that he's gone through over the past year and a half. He said it after in his post-race interview on the front stretch that he didn't know that he'd be racing a Cup Series car right now when it was a year and a half ago. And for good reason, obviously. The story, we've talked about that plenty on this show over the past year and a half. But when you look at his work off the racetrack and on the track this season, you have to absolutely wonder at and just really covet this incredible accomplishment from the five team as a whole. Cliff Daniels coming in a totally new beast here with Kyle Larson, the storyline and all that, going from a 7-time champion to a guy that's trying to prove himself and get his name back into contention. All those storylines mixed in created a very interesting finale. And I'd love to get your thoughts, Kyle, on what you thought the race was like from your perspective. Seemed like it was pretty good racing throughout, lots of comers and goers. We had all three, or technically four, I guess, of the championship four leading at one point or another. I think Hamlin led under caution there. But other than that, it seemed like it was, one time it looked like it was Chase Elliott's race. Another time it could have been Martin Truex Jr.'s race. Kyle Larson's car maybe wasn't the best all day, and I think he admitted that in Cliff Daniels after the race, that they didn't really have the best piece. But your thoughts overall, Kyle, on Kyle Larson's incredible season and this championship win?
Yeah, so on Larson, I don't necessarily think that it's a comeback thing or he was proving anything in his performance this season, because we knew all along how supremely talented he was. Granted, I don't think we thought he was necessarily as good as he was this season. We thought maybe this would take a couple of years to get there once he got to a Hendrick Motorsports or whatever big team he ended up with. The comeback and proving himself came off the track. We knew all along what it would be on the track once he got there. So I don't think any of the on-track stuff has anything to do with his story or progression as a person off the track. I just want to make that important off the start, because I think that's something that a lot of people kind of combine. And I think it's two completely separate things, because Kyle Larson, for his entire time as a prospect in the Cup Series, we've known to be a potential future champion. And when we saw him with Chip Ganassi Racing, being able to go out and win multiple times with kind of second tier equipment and go out and do so in dominating fashion sometime and go out and be on the limit every single lap of every single race, we saw him kind of be that supremely talented driver that you wonder what he could possibly do if he got to a championship level team. And we saw it exactly this season. It took him like 3-4 races to kind of get his bearings at the new team and go out and start winning races, and ended up with 10 on the season, 5 of which coming during the playoff races. It was a remarkable season for Kyle Larson, and they cap it off by having a full team performance. Like you mentioned, had that late pit stop really putting them to the front and giving them the opportunity for the best restarter statistically in the Cup Series to go out, restart well off the start, go and have the short run speed and go and outrun the 2 JGR cars. So if the race breaks differently, it could have gone any of the 4 drivers' ways in the championship 4. I think that's what made it an especially exciting race, because all 4 of them realistically had a shot throughout this entire race. When you look at the long run speed of the JGR cars and having track position at certain times, the short run speed of the 200 cars, and Chase Elliott looking good for the first kind of half to 2/3 of the race versus Larson coming on more as the race went along, stuff like that. So it was a really fun race. And I think it kind of showed off the elements that you would hope for out of a championship 4 kind of finale, where everybody is in the mix and it's an ongoing storyline throughout. It's not necessarily one driver coming through the field and dominating all day and that kind of thing. So it was a really good race. It was a great way to finish off the season. But I think most importantly, the driver that is most deserving of the championship goes out and gets it done. And a bit of a storybook ending here for not only Kyle Larson's season, for Hendrick Motorsports, for the Gen 6 car, having the same team that won the first race, won the last race, won the first champ. Like there's all these different things that you can look at for being kind of this nice way to end it off here. So a good weekend of racing. The Cup race, I think, lived up to the expectations. And in the end of the day, we did get the most deserving champion.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important thing, where we left maybe with a little bit more of a bitter taste in our mouth last season with the storyline of Kevin Harvick and Denny Hamlin all season long. This was very much a Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson season, with Larson having just the plethora of race victories in his pocket. And to get double-digit wins in a season, it's really, really impressive. We haven't seen that, of course, since Jimmy Johnson back in 2007. So there's a lot of different parallels. Of course, that's the same car that finished 5th in this race last year to say farewell to Jimmy Johnson and Hendrick Motorsports tenure and time together. And they came to play this weekend. And, from practice speeds, I think what I took away from this weekend a lot too is just how monumental practice and qualifying is. It just feels so right to have that a part of a race weekend. And
I think that's a little overstated.
I don't know.
I think it's more the sentimentality of having the full race weekend. The element that I do think went kind of understated as the weekend went along was qualifying, and Larson being able to win the pole and get first pit selection and stuff like that. Granted, it didn't mean a ton because we already knew the championship 4 would get the first 4 selections, but out of those 4, whoever qualified the best would get that number 1 pit stall. And we saw it come into play at the end of things, but we didn't really see many qualifying mock runs and practice and stuff like that. So it was interesting to see how the crew chiefs kind of played that, and some of them kind of bypassing qualifying, maybe rightfully so, to get that race setup fixed in and stuff like that. But ultimately it was Larson's speed and in qualifying that ended up really being the difference maker. Because if he doesn't have that first pit stall, if it's somebody else, he probably isn't able to get away the way that he does. Fast pit stop is great, but if he can't get off the line like he did to beat Hamlin like that, he's probably just
gunned it, man. That was
it was awesome to see, and it was I think the second best pit stop in terms of time of the season. Like that's ridiculous. So, but it's one thing to have that pit stop and then get off if you're somewhere in the middle of pit road. It's another thing to have that stop and be able to gun it off the line and be able to beat somebody like Hamlin to the line there. So, but yeah, it was great to see practice qualifying back. I don't think it was maybe momentous or anything like that. But it was great to have it back and actually feel like a normal race weekend.
Yeah. I just think when you go without something for such a long period of time, or, just something like that, you really, appreciate it much, much more. And on a weekend like this, where a champion is decided, you realize what it lacked last season when, there was, so much uncertainty. You could just fail pre-race tech and you just start at the tail end of the field. But this time, Larson, Hamlin, and Truex's car all failed pre-race inspection twice, and they made it through on the third try. Of course, those 3 ended up being the top 3 in the championship as well. So you think that they're just trying that little bit more, maybe, I don't know, but they came to play all 4 of them. Hamlin probably the least of the four, to be honest. I think when you look at the day as a whole, all the other guys led more longer periods of time and just showed more consistent speed. But Hamlin was always kind of playing catch up, it seemed, in that race.
To a certain extent, I think some of that has to do with track position and then having to come from a little bit further back and always kind of being the third or fourth in the line and having the long run speed to potentially get up there and get the win and stuff like that, but having to work their way up to get to that point. And so I think it was only a couple of times where we really saw them have that opportunity to go through with the lack of short run speed coming around on the long run and never getting that true long run in the final stage to really go out and show what they had. So I do think that it's fair to put them as number 4, but I don't think we also got to see the true potential of what they were able to do if they got some clean air at the front, if they got that track position and a longer run to go with it.
Yeah, we never had the longest green flag run we've ever seen kind of at Phoenix. That's probably not the best way to characterize it, but it wasn't an exponentially long run that we saw maybe last year to conclude the race. And then that was what JGR was banking on, both of their cars, that it would go kind of more green to the end. And I think that's a little bit foolish on their part if that was what they were thinking going into the weekend, that it was going to go green to the end, saying that it did go green last year. But more often than not in these championship races, there is a caution in the final 20, 25 laps or something like that, whether that was at Homestead or, could be here on out at this racetrack. And I think you just need that short run speed. And that is exactly what Larson had. If that run goes maybe another 10 laps longer at the finish, maybe Truex definitely has a shot there. And
if it goes 3 more laps, Truex would have had a shot. Well,
with the way he was driving, he was driving in the corner really, really deep, and it was making time. He just went all out, and credit to him. Like, Truex came into this race probably the underdog of the 4 of them based off of practice speeds, because people just looked at the timing sheets overall and didn't look at the overall long run numbers. But Truex was probably the fastest car in the long run. And I don't know if it went green to the end there when he was out front and Hamlin was in second. If Hamlin could have got past the 19, it would have been very, very close. But with it being so difficult to pass sometimes, I think Truex would have maybe held him off, but would have been an entertaining battle if that went to the end as well.
Run.
Yeah. But they all brought very competitive pieces, and Elliott looked at times like he was going to go back to back, but didn't come to fruition there for him, because I think all around the whole weekend, Kyle Larson probably had the best start to finish weekend, was very fast in practice, was very fast, obviously in qualifying, got the pole. He did everything he needed to do behind the wheel of the car. And Cliff Daniels did a questionable strategy early on, pitting on lap 6 on the first caution of the race to lose track position when it was so coveted all day long, but it ended up, paying off for him, because in the next 6 laps, there was another caution, and then he cycled right back to the front and was able to kind of maintain that track position a little bit more. So it
also doesn't matter until the second stage ends, to be fair.
Not really. I think
it doesn't at all,
because the fastest cars get to the front, and we saw that last year. I've always been more of an advocate for people starting at the back, because I think you learn a lot more about your car, and you get to learn what it does in traffic and everything like that. I think it pays dividends a little bit later in the run, and then people are like, where did he come from? Well, I think he was learning a little bit more what his car is able to do maneuverability wise and stuff like that, when some guys are just out in clean air and think that that they are invincible, if you will, out front, because they have that clean air, they have that track position. But Larson was playing a little bit more of a strategic game, it seemed, at the top of the pit box with Cliff Daniels. And I think that that's what they've done so well this season, is adjusting to the car and giving Larson what he needs behind the wheel. I don't know if you feel the same way too, Kyle, but it never felt like they got behind in adjustments the entire season. While some other teams maybe fell off during the race, I think they just brought the most speed overall. But also when he was lacking that speed, they gave him the adjustments that he needed to get back up to the front, where I feel like he was basically the entire season. I don't remember. It's hard to recall more often than not, like when Larson was running back in like 8th, I feel like it was never really a thing. I don't know. Do you feel the same way? It was just
he set a laps record, so laps led record. So that's usually how it goes when you lead that many laps. But I think it was more so they just had really fast cars, and when they were winning races, it was in dominant fashion. They were leading from the get-go. I don't know how much of it was really adjustments over races went. I can't necessarily think it too many times, but some of that is also just staying on top of it and being fast throughout a race. So I think it was more so just them clicking as an entire team, having the right setups from the get-go and things like that, more so than really being behind at the beginning of a race and being able to adjust for the end of things. But if you're fast at the beginning of the race, doesn't necessarily mean you're fast at the end of it. And a lot of the times they were both. So clearly they're doing something right.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy to think how much of a performance shift there was between Jimmie Johnson, who granted is at the end of his Cup Series career, didn't quite have the liking to this style of package, it seemed, with the 550 stuff. And even 750 didn't quite seem like that fit Jimmie Johnson's driving style. It was much more of a high horsepower advantage for him over his career. That's why we saw him dominate for so many years, because he had an unbelievable ability to control the car at high speeds, and was probably the best that I've ever seen really do that. But Larson was able to take a liking to this car very, very quickly, and the 550 package. And when we talked about this last week, kind of previewing the weekend, we thought that maybe the 750 was, if there was a weakness to this 5 car, it was the greatest weakness, considering that they were second on median lap time over the course of the season. Like, that is crazy to think that they were first in one category and second in the other. That team was just across the board fast. And I don't know how they were able to do that compared to the competition, where they are in the same stable as Alex Bowman, William Byron, and Chase Elliott. I know that there's a lot of stuff that the driver behind the wheel does to accommodate for that kind of thing. And Kyle Larson is absolutely one of the most, if not the most talented drivers I've ever watched in my life. And I just think that they were able to execute a game plan from start to finish. And Jimmie Johnson's kind of swan song season last year ended up carrying momentum to that team this year, and it ended up providing them a wave of emotion to carry on for a championship. And it was great to see that the 5 car being back in victory lane, and throughout the course of the season, the Ricky Hendrick tribute scheme getting a lot of love throughout the year, as it should. And I don't know, I think it all kind of worked together for a very harmonious kind of finish to the Gen 6 era that, obviously, as you pointed out earlier, was started with Jimmie Johnson winning the Daytona 500 in 2013, winning the championship in 2013. And then obviously here, Kyle Larson in that same car without the same number, but the same kind of personnel surrounding that team, same organization, concluding it with the same thing, with a book-ending victory and championship.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Jimmie Johnson stuff, I think we also need to remember that it is different years and it's different levels of competitiveness for Hendrick Motorsports. When you look back to last season, it wasn't the dominant season like we saw this year. There are cars all ranked inside the top 10 in terms of median lap time on just all tracks, and 3 of those inside the top 4 when you look at Larson, Byron, and Elliott there. So I think it's important to remember that when you look back on Jimmie Johnson's season and missing the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. Did they underperform to a certain extent? Sure. But Johnson, in terms of peer and those kind of stats, still ranked out as at least an average driver in like the 1.5-ish range. Kyle Larson had a spectacular season that exceeded everything we could have expected from him this season in terms of peer, at a 4.4 leading the Cup Series for Motorsports Analytics. And so that, combined with an uptick in performance from the team and all this kind of stuff, combined for the championship season that we saw, I don't think it's an indictment or anything on Jimmie Johnson's performance last year or anything like that, because it wasn't just him. William Byron was much worse than last year than he was this year. Alex Bowman was more consistent last year, but he also got more wins this year and stuff like that. So when you look at all that kind of stuff, it was really only Chase Elliott as being the true kind of guy at the front there, and really kind of specifically in terms of 750 speed and stuff like that and road courses over the season. So it's important to remember that when you look back on this season and think, wow, Kyle Larson's so good. That's the Jimmie Johnson car. What the hell were they doing last year? Stuff like that. It's not as black and white as that.
No, I agree with that.
And I'm not suggesting that you said that either. No. I'm just saying that in general. But.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I just wanted to, touch on a little bit Hendrick Motorsports resurgence here over the past, the past 2 years. Like, I remember after 2017, after like Jimmie Johnson won his final race of his career at Dover, right? They had a long period of time there where they were struggling, and everybody was like, what's going on with Hendrick Motorsports? 2018 was dismal. 2019 was dismal. And then they would come back with a vengeance in 2020 with the championship. Whether that was deserved or not season long, you can obviously make that argument with Chase Elliott coming on strong in the final 5 races of the season. In this playoff format, that's all you need to do, right? But season long, that's Kevin Harvick's championship to win last year. So really, this has been a long time coming for Hendrick Motorsports to get back to the top of this sport. And we've seen we've seen Joe Gibbs Racing, and we've seen Team Penske, and then Stewart Haas Racing to a certain extent with Kevin Harvick really take a stronghold over the past couple of seasons. And the fascinating thing in this playoff format is just how much variety we've had in champions. We've only had one repeat champion, being Kyle Busch, in this format, which is crazy to think. I'm not going to touch on Kyle Busch. Don't worry.
I'm smiling because there's a reason for that. And it's because the championship format, but
I understand that, but just to think how much domination we saw prior to this format, with Jimmy Johnson winning 5 in a row and then, getting his
that's why they changed the format.
I know. And that's maybe the most ultimate kind of finger to Jimmy Johnson, maybe saying stop winning championships, because it was, people were calling it boring, but you have to appreciate. We similarly with Lewis Hamilton, what we're doing right now is appreciating what they're giving us on the track, because we may never see it again, maybe in our lifetime, or it won't be for quite some time before we see something of that level of domination in a sport like motorsports in general. And I think that needs to be talked about more. And I think that was what Jimmy Johnson's era maybe lacked to a certain extent, because everybody was just like, okay, when is the 48 going to stop losing? Similarly to when Lewis Hamilton, when is he going to stop winning? Stop winning, excuse me. It's just a lot of different things like that, where you think about Hendrick Motorsports and how far they've come as an organization since Jimmy Johnson's kind of tail end of his career, Jeff Gordon's kind of end of his career, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s end of his career. They've had a lot of movement over there with personnel. Chad Knaus is now off at the top of the pit box. They've gone through an overhaul at that team, and it has clearly paid off, which is credit to them, because it is not easy to do when you get knocked down in a sport like this, to come back and dominate like they did this season. And we've seen, like, Roush Fenway Racing is probably the most clear example, where they were so good for so many years, winning races, being in that top consistent pack, and then they just fell off. Like, it felt like overnight. And with maybe this era of car, we've seen just a downward trajectory of that organization, where they had 5 cars in the chase, over a decade ago, which is,
over a decade ago. I don't know what you're talking about. It's like 15 years now.
50, okay, well over a decade, but still, it's not easy to get back up. And we've seen that with Roush, and that's why Keselowski's going over there next season to try and build that team back up. But Hendrick Motorsports, not to say that they're comparable, but just the decline was just so steep. And what we expect from Hendrick Motorsports for so many years, they're dominating the sport, that it was definitely nice to see them back. I'm sure you thought the same thing, just to have that more competitive nature at the front of the field, with Kyle Larson dominating this season, but having Hendrick back into that mix, having race winning drivers across the board. And it really spiced things up over the course of 2021, it felt like.
Yeah. And Hendrick's resurgence comes down to making correct decisions, and Roush Fenway back in the day did make those correct decisions. They weren't able to make the right calls in terms of personnel, in terms of making the right calls and progression. And we saw Hendrick Motorsports kind of have a fork in the road moment over the last few years, where they could have gone down a similar path, where they continue doubling down on expensive veteran drivers, stuff like that, and continue down the path of mediocrity. Instead, they kind of looked inward, saw what needed to change, made those changes, made the right calls in terms of the drivers that they brought in, getting in your Chase Elliott's, getting in your William Byrons and stuff like that, having an Alex Bowman there, and then getting a big name free agent, circumstances aside, and Kyle Larson last year, that really brought things together. But on top of that, making the right calls in terms of crew chiefs, having Chad Knaus work with William Byron to help him in his young career. And then when he felt that, or when the team felt that he was ready to truly start to contend, move Knaus to an overseeing role, bring in somebody in Rudy Fugle, have Cliff Daniels, somebody working in the organization as a potential future crew chief. They see an opportunity to make that change once Kevin Mendering didn't work out with Jimmy Johnson, make that switch to put Daniels in a bit earlier than the timeline expected, to work with a veteran driver like that, bring him up as a crew chief, and then eventually work alongside their current champion now in Kyle Larson, who I'm sure at the time they didn't necessarily expect, but insert free agent or signing here, that would be their next kind of championship level guy. And so you look at all the moves that they've made, all the personnel decisions, both on the track, off the track, all these kind of things.
Bring Jeff Gordon in now. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Well, that was more of a A layup to say the least, in terms of bringing him in. But all those moves pointed towards them ending up where they are here, where they're back at the front of the grid and back-to-back champions and all this kind of stuff. It easily could have gone the Rush Fenway or whatever past organization that was really, really good and started to falter and kind of fell apart. Could have easily gone that way. But because of the personnel decisions they made, because of certain areas they decided to go down to grab a developing driver here, to grab a crew member here, these kind of things is why they're back here and why certain teams in the past necessarily did.
Yeah. And I think I just want to preface, like, their timing has been spectacular, like how they've just gone about things very methodically. They know when it's time for a change, and they made the right changes with the right personnel to fill those kind of gaps where they felt like they were lacking in some areas. And I think the Cliff Daniels move was genius. Obviously, we saw Jimmy Johnson's performance tick up as soon as he went atop of the pit box for that 48 car. And then we've seen obviously Kyle Larson come into this car. Cliff Daniels matured under or overseeing Jimmy Johnson, learning from a guy that has so much experience, so much knowledge on what a car needs to go fast and everything like that. And he just provided that for Kyle Larson this season. And I mean, it's crazy to think how much they've changed that organization. This is not the Hendrick Motorsports we grew up watching. This is not the Jimmy Johnson, Casey Kane, Jeff Gordon, all these kind of guys where, they were absolutely veterans at that point in time. And it got to them to that point of success, but then they reached a certain point where they just couldn't go any further with that group. And now they've just built it back from the bottom up, and they are going to be here to stay for a long, long time with that driver lineup. You think Chase Elliott, William Byron, and Kyle Larson are going to be mainstays of that organization for at least the next 10 years. Like, I would be shocked if any of them move.
2 of them are free agents next year. You never know.
Fair enough. But why would you want to leave Hendrick Motorsports? I understand funding maybe is an issue, but
no, I don't think it is.
Well, maybe, if you look at, never mind. But if funding were to be an issue, I just think that they would try and make it work. Because if they can make it work for Alex Bowman,
that damn team had Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Casey Kane. I don't think that they're necessarily struggling for funds.
No, but sponsorship dollars just means so much more nowadays and everything like that. They don't have like that maybe lockdown sponsor like you did with the Lowe's or something like that for so many years, or National Guard or AMP or whatever it was, Drive to End Hunger, Exalta, DuPont, all the list goes on and on for what Hendrick Motorsports can bring in terms of sponsorship.
I don't think
they'll probably throw HendrickCars.com and all for it.
Yeah.
I understand that, but it's just been it's refreshing to have them back, at their best. And I'm very curious to see how they get on next season with this next gen car. How can they continue this? Because
for everybody,
it's fair enough, but it just felt like they had finally started to hit their stride here once again with, I think once they changed the Camaro body, they had that first edition of it, I believe it was the ZL1, and now they have a ZL1E or whatever it was. And then that really just upticked their performance massively. I don't know what it was that this new body of the Chevrolet was able to create for this team, but it absolutely just launched Chevrolet and Hendrick Motorsports back up into contention more consistently, where back in 2018, it just didn't seem like it was working that well with that style after switching from the SS to the Camaro. It was kind of a weird shift for them, it felt like, in this next gen era. And then it just kind of pushed them backwards. And then they made the shifts. And now with this new car, new generation of drivers, new management, new everything at that team, they're really starting to hit their stride. And I think the next gen car is going to be very interesting to see if they can continue that level of performance once again, or are they going to go kind of backwards once again? I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see who comes out on top next year.
Yeah, and that's the big question, is who's going to come out on top next year? Is a team like Stewart-Haas going to have a resurgence next year? And maybe they've been allocating time and energy into that next generation of car, or maybe they did just have a drop in performance this year. What does a Penske look like? Well, like there's so many different possibilities. How truly does the joint parts and everything like that coming from one manufacturer for everybody impact the parity across the field? Does it truly put things completely in the driver's hands as much as they possibly can? And we see some mid-pack teams go out and contending for wins early on. Like, there's so many different things. Like last year in the third race of the season, we saw Chris Buescher win a stage at Homestead. Like, there's a lot of weird stuff that can happen there at the beginning of seasons in normal years. And next year is just going to be times 1,000 because it's going to be a brand new car that we just don't know anything about going into those first few races. So there's going to be a lot to learn at the beginning of next year. I think that we'll still see the big teams come to the front and win races and win stages and all these kind of things, but it's definitely going to shake up at least something. And whether that's a big name struggling, whether that's a big team struggling, whether that's a mid-pack team suddenly becoming a race win contender, like there's so many different things to potentially watch for next year. Especially at the beginning of the year. It's just impossible to predict.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how much the beginning half of the season differs from the end of the season. Who is able to maintain that consistency season long, who comes out of the gates flying, who starts off maybe slow and then picks it up, or who starts off hot and then just can't maintain that for the season. I think we're going to have a lot of different variety next season, lots of different race winners, lots of uncertainty around these guys. I mean, if you're going to think of a year that maybe you could see potentially 16 winners for this playoff format, you could argue next year could be it.
I think it's going to go one of two ways. Either it's going to go the way that you're suggesting there, where everybody wins and it's going to be a crazy season and the winningest driver has like 3 or 4 wins, something like that. And it's just like a crazy season like that. Or one team is just going to completely hit it on the nose and they're going to dominate the season and it's going to be a bit of a rout. And we could see 2, 3, I won't even suggest 4, but a dominant season in which some team gets a majority of the spots in the championship 4. And we're like, wow, how the hell did they get this right? And stuff like that. So I think it's one of two ways. I think your way is more likely. But I think that just suggests the way that we just don't know how things are going to go. It could go the way where Hendrick continues their dominance with the young, promising drivers that they have, 2 of the best drivers in the field currently, and Larson and Elliott, 2 promising drivers there. Bowman, who seems to win just a couple of times a year now.
Win or bust.
Pick him off. And if he's not winning the race, he's outside the top 10. And then William Byron, who showed some promise to getting up to those Larson and Elliott kind of ways, but isn't quite there yet. And so they could easily go out and just dominate the season, even greater than they did last year, or they could completely fall off because they put so much into the past season that maybe they aren't as ready for the upcoming season, all these kind of things. So it's going to be a fascinating start to the season, especially with the schedule diversity and how many different tracks we go to specifically for the regular season, but especially in those first handful of weeks when you look at obviously a super speedway starting things off. But then you've got like a 2-mile track in there. You've got a bunch of different stuff. So there's a lot of different stuff that you can look at there. That's going to make for some fascinating storylines to start the year at the very least.
Yeah, and just completely off topic, really, but like William Byron's season this in 2021 really reminded me of Ryan Blaney's 2020 season, where
I think that's a fair comparison.
They were, on the verge of that win. They get one, and you feel like, okay, but they were so consistent. They showed promise. They were leading laps. They were out front consistently, or in that top 5 mix consistently throughout the season. I'm looking at William Byron easily next season as a breakout candidate to get maybe 3 wins at minimum. Maybe if you're looking at somebody over there that's trying to blossom into something here, showed a lot of promise this year. Leading laps was second to Kyle Larson, a lot on the 1.5 mile so far this season. You imagine maybe he can get maybe 1 or 2 of those races back this or next season if it came down to it. So lots of different things to consider for 2022. Next gen car, totally new style of pit stops. I don't know if you've seen a video of what the pit stops look like. It's really weird because it takes like almost half of the time, it felt like, just undoing 1 lug nut instead of the usual 5. It's going to take a lot of things to get used to, the numbers moving, everything like that. There's a lot of different things that are going to be looking different from the NASCAR we grew up watching, and for the new generation of people that are going to start watching the sport, or the generation that are currently watching, it's going to take some time to get used to what this new era next gen car looks like and how it reacts and how it drives. As we've said all season, we're cautiously optimistic on what this car could provide, but saying that, we've heard a lot of comments from the drivers on how it drives and how it reacts, and it's arguably not going to look too different from what we see nowadays with the 550 package on the 1.5 miles. Most likely they want the pack racing, they want it tight and condensed. So we'll see what it looks like. I'm looking forward to having the composite bodies on the cars next season, so tire rubs won't be so much of a thing. Maybe we see a little bit more argy-bargy stuff, more contact stuff like that. I would love to see that come back. I think we were lacking that at some points in the last couple of seasons, where it hasn't been as rough and tough and people are afraid to put the bumper to somebody. I hope that comes back a little bit, because that is what the sport kind of needs a little bit, with some rivalries and to just kind of revamp this stuff. Kevin Harvick and Chase Elliott was great. I think that was just great for the sport in general, having your most popular driver fight somebody in his, latter years of his career, if you will. But somebody that people like to hate sometimes in Kevin Harvick, and people, something that people love to love in Chase Elliott. So I think that something like that needs to carry over, or just, you need to have some of that stuff just to continue to have a little bit of animosity, a protagonist and an antagonist for a season. It's good to have stuff like that. And hopefully we see something like that next season. But you have any final thoughts on the Cup Series, Kyle, for what this season kind of was, the championship race, Kyle Larson's season as a whole, before we move on to the Xfinity and trucks?
Yeah, I just think overall it was a really strong season. It's nice to kind of go away with the 550 package and the way that it was kind of thrown onto a car that wasn't built for it and stuff like that. There's a lot more promise with the new car, given that it's built for these kind of packages. And so horsepower isn't the end all be all. There's lots of series that have 550 or less horsepower that have better racing than what NASCAR has had with that package. Granted, those aren't usually oval series, so it'll be interesting to see how that goes with the new car, stuff like that. I remain cautiously optimistic. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. But I think overall the season was really, really strong. You had a lot of great moments. You had a lot of great races. And I think it was a strong send off for the current generation of cars. We go into a new era of NASCAR.
It wouldn't be right if we didn't give the season as a whole a grade, Kyle. That's our thing. What are you thinking out of 10? What would you give the 2021 NASCAR Cup Series season? I'm going to put you on the spot.
What am I going to go with for this one? So I think overall there was some good moments. I think I'll go with like an 8 out of 10, something like that. I think it was a strong season. There were some good moments. There was some dull races mixed in. There was some shenanigans and whatnot that, either depending on which side of things or depending on what you were looking at, were either fun or stupid. So I think overall I'll go with like an 8 out of 10. I enjoyed the season as a whole. There was some great moments, some road course races that were really interesting, some 750 races that were really interesting. There was even some 550 races that had some good restarts and finishes and stuff like that, which is the whole point of the 550 package. The 80-90% of the race doesn't matter for it. And so I think an 8 out of 10 is maybe on the higher side of things, but I think that's what I'll land on for this one.
I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. I know Fox, did the big slogan, the best season ever, to really start the year. I think that was always going to be, you have to promote the sport. You got to try and do the best you can, but this was not the best season ever. It was obviously really great to watch Kyle Larson have this kind of resurgence in his career, or having a coming out party. That's probably a better way of putting it, where we really see the talent that he has, not just on NASCAR, but on the dirt scene as well. Like, this guy won basically everything that he entered this season. And
he did that last year too on dirt, but
to do it midweek races. I think that honestly helped them a lot this season too, staying sharp throughout the week, doing stuff like that where that lack of practice maybe comes in qualifying. I think that will be nice to have back next season, just to have the element for the race fan and, have something to go off of for a weekend, and maybe have a little bit more expectations coming into the weekend. What can you look forward to? What can you not, kind of thing. Just too much uncertainty for my personal enjoyment going into a weekend. I feel like the broadcast can hone in on more topics a little bit more. It was nice to have Clint Boyer in the booth for the first time this season. Feels like a long time ago since Fox was doing any broadcasting this year, but it was nice to have Clint Boyer in the booth. Jeff Gordon, of course, going away next season. So interesting to see who they fill that vacant spot with, but that's still yet to be determined. Yeah, I just 7 out of 10 for me. There was a couple of moments throughout the season I think NASCAR kind of screwed up on in terms of officiating. It just kind of left a sour taste in my mouth. I know it's going to sound pretty harsh coming from a Kyle Busch fan after the New Hampshire thing, but that did have an impact on that. Just stuff like that where they weren't really on the ball, it felt like. And I still think that they continue to emphasize that they have no choice, but they keep on marketing that this car and this package is the right way to go. And when in reality, I think there's a lot of fans out there that feel differently to that. But, they say that we're the outspoken minority when it comes to not liking the 550 package compared to what it used to be with this car, or the 950 and 900 horsepower package. But that is what it is at the end of the day. I think we just have to appreciate the races for what they are. We did have some good 1.5 mile races. I think the Vegas race in the early part of the season was very, very good. And 750 speed tracks were pretty good additions to the calendar in some senses. Indianapolis road course was kind of a what house, it was just a crazy race where it just felt like it was all over the place. Had a great winner though at the end of the day with Alma Dinger winning it, but when you have somebody like this, have a dominant season, it is nice to finally have that guy win the championship. If it wasn't Kyle Larson winning the championship this past weekend, I think I would definitely feel a lot lower on the season as a whole, but I feel rewarded for watching 36 races from start to finish the entire year, and first season with NASCAR and TSN as well. So that was really fun. That bumps it up a little bit, I would say, but on-track racing products at times were a little bit stale. But I'm glad that the deserving champion ended up winning it all and won the race, an exciting finale at least. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next season with it all. But 7 out of 10 for me on the 2021 Cup Series season. Let's move on to the Xfinity Series, Kyle. Probably the best finish of the weekend, for sure, after what we saw. An crazy, crazy race. And I finally, after the third season of doing this show for the championship picks, we both end up getting one right. How about that? Hey, after this long, we finally get one right. You get Daniel Hamrick right for the Xfinity Series. I get Kyle Larson right for the Cup Series. What a finish to the Xfinity Series season with Daniel Hamrick, Austin Cindric going head to head. Green, white checkered. Cindric has the lead, and Hamrick held nothing back. It was great to hear Dave Rogers over the radio, as he has been basically the entire season, just, pumping up his driver, giving him all the encouragement that he needs to go out there and do what he needs to do to go win the championship. And like you said over the radio, you won't have to hear that stupid question anymore. Daniel Hamrick is a race winner in NASCAR and a NASCAR champion to go along with it. What a story. What a season for him. And I'm going to say right off the gate, I'm sorry, Daniel Hamrick. I am sorry for what I've said on this show. I've been extremely, extremely harsh on you. Just
putting it lightly.
Because you hadn't won. And I really do feel like I have to apologize for that, because at the end of the day, you win the championship and you win a race and you did everything that you needed to do in my books to say that you're not the biggest disappointment of the season. The ultimate jinx going back to our preseason episode.
Right. Yeah. It was all set play, right?
I just envisioned this from the beginning. Of course, if you weren't with us at the beginning of the season, we did a preseason or preseason previews, and we went through some categories. Biggest disappointment I said would be Daniel Hamrick. Of course, that's going to make me look like an idiot, which it does. And rightfully so. He proved me wrong from basically start to finish. But I said that if he didn't win a race with JGR this season in an 18 car, a car that has proven to win it, or that organization has been able to proven that they are a race winning organization in the series, then he doesn't deserve a car of that capacity. And he left it late. But he ended up winning it. So he met my requirements and he wins the championship. Of course, Kyle, you've been very outspoken on this to go against my opinion, and you are absolutely right on this one with Daniel Hamrick, right on the nose. But your thoughts, I'd love to hear what you thought, closing in those final laps, Hamrick, after Martinsville, where he said after the race where he said, maybe he kind of thought big picture and let Gragson get the win just because he didn't want to impact a shot at the championship this weekend. And it started on the Wednesday where, the car the car gets stranded in Texas and they have to try and rush to Phoenix. It gets there 30 minutes before practice with just a little scuff on the right front fender. And it was basically smooth sailing from there for the 18 car. It felt like the entire weekend had speed and everything like that. But what are you thinking? Daniel Hamrick, a NASCAR Xfinity Series champion and a race winner.
Yeah, the championship part I don't particularly care about because, again, my feelings on the playoffs are known. I think it would have been perfectly fine if that was him going for his first career race win and stuff like that. But in terms of Daniel Hamrick, it just goes back to the point that I've made continuously over the season. And there's more to racing than just winning races. There's an element that needs to go towards consistency. It's the same thing for Denny Hamlin over the course of the season. He didn't win for a very, very long time this season, and yet he was leading the season-long points, regular season points. He was right there with Kyle Larson season-long in terms of speed and consistency and being at the front. He just hadn't converted those to wins. Doesn't mean it's been a bad season or anything like that. And in Daniel Hamrick's case, a career, there's something that goes to say about being able to finish top 5, top 10, finish consistently, go out out there and be able to contend with those guys who do win the races and go out there and finish the races more often than they do, be in positions to finish top of the points like he did going up against Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, Cole Custer, those guys back when he was with RCR in the Xfinity series, to go out there and in this current format, go out and make a championship 4 on points and stuff like that. And so it's just nice to see him vindicated for the amount of effort and work that he's put into his career. For all the people that have said that he's not deserving of rides and stuff like that, even though he has gotten those consistent results.
Who, me?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to say it specifically, but again, there's more to racing than just winning races. And Daniel Hamrick finally went out and got that first win this past weekend. So it was a great moment for him. It was great to see him finally get that monkey off the back. And I'm excited what he can to see what he can do at Colleague next year with that monkey off the back, not having the every time you have a late race restart on the front row, having the okay, what's going to go wrong this time? And so excited to see what he can do over there. It was nice seeing AJ compliment him and give him the water shower in the car and stuff like that after the race. And so, no, it's just great to see him finally break through, get the backflip, all the kind of stuff that you would have hoped to see at some point this season. And I think it also goes to show his resilience over the course of his career, also this season. When you look at JGR not necessarily being the same team that they were in years past outside of the 54, when you look at in years past, even Brandon Jones going out and winning races, Harrison Burton being very strong as a rookie, all these kind of things, they weren't that same team this year. Outside of the 54, they hadn't won a race all season long. Daniel Hamrick by far was the best in terms of consistency, and he goes out and gets that win in the final race of the year with JGR. So it was just an overall great weekend of racing. The Xfinity race was great throughout. It was really fun watching Nemechek, Hamrick, and Cindric there battle for the lead throughout a bunch of that race. I wish the final stage went green a lot more often so we could have seen much more of that battling and stuff like that, rather than a restart 3/4 of a lap and then another restart. But I think at the end of the day, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that was really any kind of disappointed or upset with Daniel Hamrick winning.
No, I'm not. I was really hard on the guy, and it's crazy to me that I would not take the quote from my favorite movie of all time, the Cars movie, from Tex at the end of that film. There's a whole lot more to racing than just winning, to heart. And I think with this format, I've been definitely, influenced on that aspect where I just have to rate race wins more highly from my personal perspective. And I think this season was a real reminder to me to go back to what it was before this format, where consistency was more of a key factor in determining the outcome of races and champions. And I think I'm going to go more into next season with that perspective. And I think that that's a good thing from myself personally, to just start with a refresher here. I think a new era of the sport, and just go into that mindset of rating consistency, top 5s, top 10s, and maybe just try and take that more of as a positive and look at it and enjoy the race for more what it is than just an individual result in going in hoping for a race victory. And if he doesn't win, saying that being Kyle Busch, then I'm not maybe as satisfied as what it was. I got to just try and take the highs with the lows. And I think that was a good reminder for me, just as a race fan, just watching Daniel Hamrick. I've slated on him on this show for, not finishing and not coming in clutch. And I've done that with Denny Hamlin too. And we saw that this past weekend. Maybe he just didn't quite have the right circumstances go his way. We talked about that with the track position and whatnot. If he had it, he probably could have won the race. I think everybody, if they had track position, could have won that Cup Series race. The cars were all very equally matched, it seemed. But for the Xfinity Series, Daniel Hamrick was just right there in the mix of things all season long. While the storyline was obviously about Alma Dinger and Cindric, Hamrick won a lot of stages. He was right there in the mix of things, leading quite a few laps as well. And that just put him in kind of this interesting spot where, he wasn't necessarily a championship favorite the entire season, but he was kind of that third guy lying around there in the weeds that was just waiting for something to pounce and waiting for an opportunity. And when the opportunity presented itself there on those final couple of laps, he did everything he needed to do, absolutely fair way of winning the championship as well. He didn't wreck him. He nudged him. He got him out of the lane, and they fought out to the checkered flag. It was a perfect bump and run move. He didn't wreck him to win the championship. Nothing like that. He did it the right way. He did it the best way he could have in the circumstances. Cindric is obviously going to leave with a sour taste in his mouth, and I think anybody would in that situation, coming second by half a car length to the checkered flag of a championship, back-to-back championships for Cindric, what that would have meant for himself, his career, for history in the Xfinity series, all of those things. He pointed out in his post-race interview as well, for the regular season finale at Bristol, he got roughed up to get the win. He didn't end up getting that, and he gets roughed up for the championship. All those different things, there's a lot of frustration on Austin Cindric's end, and you can understand that, but there's a lot of jubilation for Daniel Hamrick on the other side of things, where, I think everybody in the garage area, all of his friends, all of his family obviously wanted him to win, and what a time to do it. So he was right there in terms of consistency the entire season: 21 top 10s, 15 top 5s, 663 laps led, had 10 stage wins. This was a deserving champion overall when you look at the numbers, maybe not the most deserving when you look at Cindric and Alma Dinger seasons, but still, he was in that mix the entire year, and I got to give him credit for that. So Ty Gibbs also wins Rookie of the Year, even though he wasn't racing. This just shows you how good of a season that he had as well, an ARCA championship, and then as well as a Rookie of the Year. Just a great kind of coming out party for JGR in that sense, giving launching a career here into hopefully a positive direction for Daniel Hamrick, and then starting one here with Ty Gibbs starting next season full time. So that's not been officially announced, I don't think, but I mean, it's no. Everybody knows it. So
he's taking the 18. It's obvious.
Yeah. So
now the question is whether he takes the 18 after that season, if you know what I mean.
Don't do that. That's not going to happen.
It's been speculated.
I would cry. I don't think that would be the guy that he would replace at JGR if there's going to be a vacancy there. I'll say that. I think, if it's going to be somebody, it would be like Truex's retirement or something.
The family
like
car. I don't know.
I would be pained if he's out of that 18 car. I got to be honest. In 2 years, I don't think even if he wins the championship next season, I don't know if they put him up to Cup because of contracts. Kyle's in there until.
I don't disagree, but just for the fun of it, when you
it's hilarious, isn't it?
The past 2 seasons, Kyle Busch has been the third most successful of the 3 big drivers there. If you look at the 20 car being the extra one, been the third most successful. He's the highest paid, I would assume, of the bunch. And it's the 18 family car that's been around since they began back in the 90s, and it's the Gibbs last name. So I can see a scenario where something could happen, is all I'll say.
If he's going to get bumped, I say that they probably bring the 54 up to Cup, and then Kyle just gets into that, but same kind of team. That would be the only kind of situation where I'd see if they're going to.
Kyle starts a team, you mean?
No. Like if Kyle stays in the organization.
They can't have 5 cars.
No, but I think somebody would be retired kind of thing. Like if somebody goes out, Kyle would just switch numbers. And then if they want to give Gibbs the 18,
okay.
That would be the only kind of scenario I would see. Like Truex is going to be the next one to go probably when you look at career wise and just everything like that. Hamlin seems he's very much ingrained in the sport.
Which 2 are in the championship for? That's all I'll say.
I think, Kyle Busch came within 3 points in a choose cone of making it to the championship 4. So I don't know. I think that's a bit harsh on him. He had a better season than Martin Truex Jr.
Just factually, he's been the third most successful over the past 2 seasons.
Technically, well, what do you value? What are you looking at that? And okay, this season
off of points, off of wins, off of everything. Truex and Hamlin have been far more successful over the last 2 seasons.
Okay, the last 2 seasons, yeah, if you combine last year was just an off year for Kyle Busch. But this year, I think he had a pretty nice comeback story.
He was basically same in terms of points over the course of the season. He was a little bit more successful. Yeah.
No way. That can't be right.
I'll pull it back up if you like.
He's got the 3rd best top 5s in the series this season and 3rd best 4th best top 10s. I mean, that's top 5 car.
So
of the
season long,
he didn't have that last year.
Points, which I believe is 2 spots better than he was the year previous.
Last year?
I believe he finished 8th last year in terms of season long points. He finished 6th this year. And in terms of differential, where is he here? He was an 8% increase. So from last year, averaging 29.5 points per race to this year, 31.9. So an 8% increase is pretty solid. It's in line about where like an Austin Dillon, it's between where Austin Dillon and Denny Hamlin were in terms of improvements. But when you look at in terms of race averages and stuff, Denny Hamlin was up at 39.9 points per race. So Truex had the wins and the 750 speed. So it's off on a tangent. I'm riling you up on intentionally, but I mean, he has the biggest paycheck of them, and he's been the third most successful. So I don't think it's exactly the craziest thing in the world, but I also don't think that Gibbs will be going to Cup for 2023. But past that, Kyle Busch's contract's up, and I don't know what'll happen from there. But
if he, I can't imagine him honestly anywhere else. But that's a different discussion for a different day. Where I just don't see him like starting his own Cup team. I just don't think it's financially viable for him to do something like that. We saw it with an Xfinity Series team, and it didn't really work out. So
I mean, the part that you're not necessarily thinking about, which I completely understand why you wouldn't, but if the certain new car isn't maybe up to something that he particularly likes to drive, maybe he just goes and tries something else.
Yeah, that would be kind of depressing, wouldn't it?
I mean, is it the most far-fetched idea to think about?
Absolutely not, but I try not to think about it. So thanks for bringing that into my mind.
Anytime. How about a scenario where Kurt Busch races longer in NASCAR than Kyle does? That'd be pretty funny.
That would be pain. That would be, oh God, I could cry thinking about that. That is depressing. But anyways, back to the Xfinity Series. Daniel Hamrick, first-time Cup Series or first-time Xfinity Series champion, and then of course I'm a first-time winner. Just your overall thoughts from the race, Kyle. I know you watched this one, not the Truck Series. I didn't watch it either, but just your thoughts of the overall race itself, like we did for the Cup Series, start to finish. It seemed like it was a bit choppy at times for sure, but the fastest cars at the front were definitely there the entire time.
Yeah, we kind of already went over it, but the three-way battle at the front between Nemechek, Cindric, and Hamrick throughout the race was really good. Wish that we had more of kind of the green flag racing so we could really see them battle it out through multiple laps at the end of that run, rather than kind of what it ended up being, which was restart, lap to 2 laps, done, restart, do it all over again. And so would have liked to see at least like a 5 to 6 lap run to the finish, which we looked like we were going to get there. And then another caution came out. And so it was just like a lap and a half kind of run to the finish. But I think overall it was an entertaining race, even if it was choppy and a little bit frustrating at times. But really, that's what the Xfinity Series is for. And that's what the Truck Series is for. It's for drivers to learn. And so you have to kind of take it in context as well.
Yeah, and it's going to be a different series once again. You know, this was Cindric's kind of championship to lose this season, it felt like, given the talent level that was around him in the series. When you look at Custer, Bell, and all these guys, you know, have been moving up to the Cup Series now, and this was kind of his domain. You know, this was kind of his area, his series to kind of win. And didn't quite execute it to half a car length there, but it is what it is. So, you know, I think that they did a great job season long, and Cindric should have nothing to hang his head about when you look at his entire Xfinity Series career, where it started off really tough with that 60 car and Roush, and he's had a remarkable kind of development phase here to make it to the next round or the next level of motorsports here. So feel very good about what Cindric is going to bring to that Team Penske organization next season. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in the 2 car. We've seen rookies kind of tend to struggle a little bit when they move up to the Cup Series. Yeah. So,
but if there's a car that's going to fit his style, it's going to be the upcoming GT3-esque next gen car. So I'm excited to see what he can do, especially on the road courses and stuff like that.
The 5-speed
will be a legitimate race win candidate, but the ovals and stuff are going to be a big test. We've seen rookies with big teams miss out on the playoffs in previous seasons. So he's going to be in tough, especially with the parity that's expected to come, and a lot of really solid mid-pack teams with really solid mid-pack drivers looking to grab those 15th, 16th playoff spots.
Yeah, he'll be in tough, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do, if he can kind of, you know, defy the historians with how it's been a tough run for the rookies in the Cup Series. If he can, you know, maybe make the playoffs as like a points weigh-in seat, maybe he wins something if something falls his way, who knows? But I think having those off and on starts, those part-time starts this season in the Cup Series should maybe give him a little bit of a nice positive boost to know that he can compete with some of these guys. We saw it on the road courses where didn't have the reliability that he needed. I don't know if that was just because it was the fourth Penske car for the weekend. It just didn't quite seem like they were entirely in tune with each other, but having an in-house car, his own team now and everything like that, not some guys just kind of put together for a race weekend to give him a start, that should pay dividends for him, I think, starting off next season. So yeah, I think for AJ Alma Dinger as well, just wanted to touch on him quickly as well. Incredible season for him, the first full-time season he's had in quite some time. Of course, the part-time stuff last year was very helpful to give him a good idea of what to expect this season, and was really, really impressive from Alma Dinger. Love to see the emotion from a guy like that. And he did an impressive job from start to finish. Didn't have the car that he needed, and it's not the greatest track for him. We talked about that last week coming into Phoenix, where we didn't really have high expectations for him. I don't know if we thought it would be that poor of a performance from the 16 car, where they just didn't really have a top 5 car the entire race. But it just doesn't always work out the way you hope it. And for Alma Dinger, he's going to go into next season trying to do the same thing, going to be one of the championship favorites once again, you'd imagine, but they're going to have to really try and focus on Phoenix, because you'd expect that 16 car to probably make that championship for next season. So interesting to see how he does. And then for Gragson, finally, his first championship 4 appearance. Pretty solid effort, got into the wall late, driving a bit too hard. Didn't really know what happened. Said he maybe slipped in some oil, maybe overdrove it. I don't know. Only he really knows the answer to that. But saying that, Gragson did have a nice end to his season here that started off pretty dismal, where he was outside the top 10 in points for the first at least handful of races of the season, first 10, 12 races of the year. Started to find his groove in the summer, and then really started to pick up momentum as soon as that playoff window started to happen, picking up some race victories, ended up with 3 on the season, winning his way into the championship race. Just had a solid kind of comeback season for him. And you're hopeful for, if you're no Gragson fan, that he takes that kind of next step next year and is more consistent while getting those race victories as well. So wanted to touch on those guys to round out the championship 4 at Phoenix. So any final thoughts on the Xfinity Series season, Kyle? We had a really great season-long battle with Cindric and Alma Dinger, with Hamrick being in there throughout. Ty Gibbs having a massive coming out party this year in the Xfinity Series, hoping to carry that momentum into next season. The 54 car dominated whoever was driving it really this season, apart from Ty Dillon. Sorry, Ty Dillon. Your thoughts on a great Xfinity Series season?
Yeah, I think the Xfinity Series once again goes to show that people like the racing product more than various different winners and all these kind of things, because the racing product has been consistently great, but you also have basically the same top 10 finishers every single race. When you look at Cindric, Allmendinger, Hamrick, Allgaier, Gragson, Haley, those guys always being up the front, Harrison, Burton, with a couple of other guys kind of mixing in there as the season goes along. But there's a very clear gap between the top 10, top 12 cars and the rest of the pack. And yet people consistently at the end of a race weekend go, that Xfinity race was the best of them all. And so hopefully that's something that we see continue into the years going forwards, because I think it's a very real scenario that the Xfinity Series is much more entertaining than the Cup Series at certain points. But yeah, it's a series that
it already could be right now.
Well, it already is. But when you look at the Xfinity Series between the veteran drivers, but also the inexperienced drivers, that makes for some very interesting moments, great races, actually having to drive the cars because the horsepower, all these kind of things. It's a series that is super, super entertaining. And I think once again delivered this season, whether you look at the Cindric, Allmendinger battles and stuff like that, different guys getting up there and winning, different kind of coming out parties. When you look at Ty Gibbs getting out there and really showing that he's one of the best prospects we've seen in at least a handful of years, some mid-pack guys having some really strong showings and all these kind of things. So it was a really solid season that's shaping up to be another solid one next year. Still a lot of unknowns in terms of the Xfinity Series next year, but JRM is going to look a little bit different with a couple new full-time guys. Colleague is going to look very different with a couple new guys in there. One of them we don't know yet. We don't know what's going to happen with the Stewart-Haas car, what's going to happen with the Penske car. Like, there's a lot of unknowns currently, but all of it we know at the end of the day is going to result in great racing. So can't wait for next season in the Xfinity Series.
Yeah, and RCR maybe resurgence as well with Sheldon Creed going into that car.
Well, I don't know if they necessarily didn't have the speed before. Maybe they just had some bad driver picks, but
I understand that. It definitely. And I'm definitely off the Riley Herbst bandwagon after this year.
I can't believe you were on it to begin with.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I wanted to be bold. And
the dude was in the 18 car the year previous and did nothing. And you were like, oh, yeah, that Daniel Hamrick guy is going to do trash, but that Herbst guy, watch out for him.
I don't know. I just felt like going into that 98 car, maybe that there would be
And
something.
I quote, Herbst has a better chance of winning in the 98 than Hamrick does with JGR.
Yeah. Hey, I can admit when I'm wrong, man. And it was bad.
Swung and missed bad on that.
That's like 5,000 strikeouts, basically. It was a pretty big L. And good thing my first name starts with an L because I'm holding it basically the entire time. So,
we haven't done the fantasy recap yet.
Oh yeah. Well, I am the champion, according to the NASCAR rules, eh?
Yeah.
What about
it's almost like the NASCAR rules.
What a turn of events. So I can make that argument when you've said it this entire last
but
year.
But the difference is that I was saying it to mock I can't say it.
Rules, but I can't say it because I don't mind the playoff format. So yeah, there's no real winning for me here. I feel like I'm boxed into a corner is what I've gotten out of this entire experience. That's the great part of
me just being a neutral that just attempts to enjoy the sport at the very least. Is that you have all these areas that I can poke holes in, and I'm just kind of here for the fun of it.
I'm basically full of holes at this point. I feel like, I've been poked, I've been everything, but it's all for fun. And
you get like the 2.5 months of the however long the off season is to fill those holes back in, be ready to go, and then I just get to
come back with hope, and then I just go right downhill once again. But yeah, I did win fantasy for the final weekend at Phoenix with Kyle Larson winning the championship. It just kind of just came down to that pick. Sure you did. But I knew Larson was going to win. So I gave you all the Hendrick and Chevy stuff so you could go on a win. I felt like being charitable. Sure you did. You did. That's what I'm going with. That's the story I'm sticking with. Hey, that's fine, man. You won 12 straight weeks against me this year. So I can't say anything. Fun fact, you won 13 weeks this season, which means that I think it was 13 at least. It might've been 14 at the end of it, but basically, if I just had that entire stretch, I almost would have beat you still. I don't know how that happened. Like how you didn't just luck into a win somehow. Oh, I would have beat you like 3-4 of those times at least. Yeah, but you just picked the wrong guys. It doesn't help when Alex Bowman has a flat tire at Road America in the final 2 laps of the race. Man, you can't. He had both DQs this year. Like, geez. I know. Picking guys that wreck at the end of races and cheaters. Jeez. I just think it was just one to forget for me from start to finish on the fantasy front, but maybe next year there's a bit of a resurgence. We'll see what happens. We'll approach the show next year. Like a handicap on me or something so you could actually have a chance. Okay. I mean, I did win the season before. All right. let's when I had no clue what we're doing, but anyway, that's not my fault. Overall, I stayed finished. I did almost finish inside the top 1,000 overall. So that was pretty cool. And like last year, you go. But this year was a different story. I had a nice little end of the season. We split the playoff races at least, so that gave me a little bit of confidence. So I'll take it at the end of the day. I almost had a perfect lineup for Phoenix as well, so that felt pretty good as well. But I think if I'd switched Hamlin and Truex, and I think there was one more guy I didn't have in there that had a decent day. But other than that, I think the Brad Keselowski bonus pick, and then everything else was on cue except for Hamlin and Truex being swapped. But I mean, that was just kind of a toss up there, but nonetheless, I'll take this winning ways into the off season and come back to with the Daytona 500 with hopefully a bit of a vengeance, because I got to go with a little bit more of a heavier hitter lineup to start the year. Because now you're going to overcorrect though. You're going to overcorrect. I really have to try and find too early my happy, or you're going to try to correct it, and then you're just going to end up doing the same thing over again. I think the thing this season that really held me back was having no idea what to expect on some of these new tracks that came into the Cup Series this year. And there was a lot of new road courses and stuff like that, who would do well, who didn't. But now having a little bit of an idea of who performed at those tracks should help. Saying that though, it is an entirely next gen car. About, though, is that you're going to way overreact to practice. That's true. You're not practice again, and you're just going to have lap time averages again. It's just going to be game over. Yeah, that's true. I'll just go off of the stats in the past. You'll go off the practice times, and I'll clean sweep you. Hey, I've been going off practice time for F1, and I'm only down by 0.5 of a yeah, but that's completely different. To be fair, that's true. But I don't know. I had a good time with it all this season, despite losing. Did you? I think when we got to like week 11, 12 of my win streak, I think you were about ready to quit. Well, just looking back on it now, it's just funny. You have to just see. Looking back, it was funny. At the time, I felt like giving you a hug. Well, I could have used a hug, but I know I mean, I was provinces away, man. I mean, that was tough.
You know, it's bad when we're getting comments about, okay, we're starting to feel bad for Lucas here. But
yeah, it was rough. It was rough. Like people were pitying me, and I didn't want that to the slightest. But whatever. I know.
The thing that like saved it a little bit is that I knew, because of the usages I was using and what you were saving, is that you would win probably like 3 out of the 4 final races, which is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I would rather have what you had.
I agree. You know.
I think the one that really got me was, when Kyle Busch won at Pocono and you had him in your lineup and I didn't. And I said, well, did you garage Kyle Busch?
Yeah. And then I was like, nope, I am swinging for the fences. And you were like, oh, good luck with that. And sure.
Yeah. And then he wins. So I just couldn't catch a break, but all is fair in love and war. And I love you to death, buddy. So that was a good one.
Feelings mutual, especially when I beat you.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine. So I forgot what winning a season long thing felt like, but yeah.
Don't worry. So Kyle Busch. There we go. Sorry, it was too easy.
Truck Series, wrap it up. Yeah. We don't really have much to comment on this one, but Ben Rhodes gave an all-time classic post-race press conference. If you haven't seen it, check it out, because he's hilarious in that. He definitely. How about
that for a bit of a face turn? How about that?
Little character arc, character development, where goes from being the goon last year. Yeah, and now everybody's like, man, get a load of this guy, the new Brad Keselowski, basically getting drunk after the championship, which was good to see. Brad also whipping up old Miller Lite glass after. That was good. He was saving it for the championship, obviously, if he would ever get that opportunity again. I think he brought it last year to Phoenix. I think that was where that kind of storyline started, and then he brought it here this time around. So that was pretty cool. But Ben Rhodes wins the championship. John Hunter Nemechek gets into the wall on lap 1, has a flat tire. All things went wrong for that Ford truck in the opening stages of that race, and then recovered to P7. I don't know how he did that, because I didn't watch the race, but also that's a pretty incredible accomplishment for being 2 laps down and going on to get a top 10 finish. And he probably had the fastest truck from getting up to that far in the field. If he didn't have that damage, he probably would win the championship. But Ben Rhodes had a very consistent season, started off the season with back-to-back wins, didn't win anything else apart from that this season, but was right there. John Hunter Nemechek obviously had the race wins, the laps led, all that stuff was much more consistent pre-playoffs, but playoffs were really, really tough for the Ford truck, kind of scraping by it. It felt like each round had a lot of mechanical issues, a lot of some incidents as well. The Martinsville one getting wrecked by Austin Wayne Self, all those kind of things just did not work out for the Ford truck. I mean, he almost won at Talladega, gets spun at the end there by Tate Fogelman. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different things in that playoff stretch with the Ford truck that didn't go right. Obviously, clear playoff favorite coming into it, just didn't end up working out in the final couple of months there, I guess, for how the Truck Series plays their playoffs. But for Ben Rhodes, was very consistent throughout the entire season. Like I mentioned, had a pretty good average finish, was right there, and had a pretty solid playoffs as well. Didn't really seem like he was in harm's way like the Ford truck was at times. So credit to him, got past Zane Smith, who obviously won his way in last week, or 2 weekends ago, week and a half ago at Martinsville, and put up a valiant effort. Matt Crafton was a no-show. You kind of expected that a little bit, though, given the 88 truck speed the entire season. Wish it was somebody else. Sheldon Creed would have been a nice storyline in there, considering how many laps he led in that race. But Chandler Smith wins the season finale. My kind of sleeper pick before we did our playoffs, you had Stuart Friesen. They both finished 1-2. So that was kind of a nice little storyline there to end the season that we're just going to only know about. But nonetheless, Ben Rhodes, Kyle, Truck Series champion.
Yeah, and he flew, as you kind of mentioned there, he flew under the radar all season long. He won the first 2 races and then quietly put together a very consistent, strong season. He finishes the year second in season-long points, like 64 behind John Hunter Nemechek, which is no small feat, given that third place was 100 points behind John Hunter Nemechek there. So Ben Rhodes, it was Sheldon Creed at the end of things, who came on really strong during the playoffs. Was a little bit further back earlier on in the season, but for Ben Rhodes, got the 2 wins early on, looked like he was going to have a really strong season again, kind of quietly put together that strong season, and then goes out and wins the championship, which I think puts his name back on the radar as kind of a prospect prospect that people should keep an eye on. He's still only 24. He's the same age, or at least in the similar kind of age range as a John Hunter Nemechek and Sheldon Creed are. All three of them are 24. Even though some would think of Sheldon Creed as a prospect coming up through the system, John Hunter Nemechek is a prospect looking to get his way back up to Cup, and Ben Rhodes is just kind of a Truck Series veteran, even though they're all similar ages. And so for Ben Rhodes, I think it was a big season for him to not only get his name back out there, but also mature as a driver. We didn't see those incidents like we saw at the end of last season. He's kept his truck clean, got those consistent results. And I'm interested to see where things go from here. He made it seem like he's returning to ThorSport, which I don't see why he wouldn't, just given the opportunities that aren't really available right now. But he went out and he made his Cup Series debut this season with Spire Motorsports, running the Sonoma race for them. And hopefully we'll see him get some opportunities into the future here, if maybe at the Xfinity level or something like that, because he went out, won the championship under the circumstances. He won 2 races early in the season, but again, kind of similar to what we were talking about with Denny Hamrick there, where consistency matters. It's not just about winning. He got the 2 wins early on in the season, but he got to the championship because of his consistent performance season long. And that's why he goes out and gets the championship as well. So fantastic year for Ben Rhodes to really kind of bounce back, get his name back out there, and really kind of emerge as one of the top Truck Series drivers here.
Yeah, I remember before he got into the Truck Series in the K&N days.
He was a big prospect.
He was pretty damn solid. I remember him winning quite a few races, being in that top 2 mix, a lot of the races down there. And then he got to the Truck Series and it kind of just stalled out a little bit. Didn't carry that momentum from the K&N days. And that was obviously unfortunate to see, but now he seems like he's refound some form, just reinvented himself maybe as a person and as well as a driver. And that's, culminated to him having a very good, consistent season. And where we saw last season where he couldn't keep his nose clean, he was getting into a lot of incidents and being more of a reckless driver for sure. He's, smartened up and gone about things much better this season. And it's obviously paid dividends. It's paid off for him. So that was really good to see. A nice storylines across the board for the Truck Series champions or all the champions this past weekend. Of course, I would have loved to have seen John Hunter Nemechek win, but at least he's coming back there next season to give it another shot. And you expect him to be right back up there again.
So in a certain 20 car, but
definitely. That's unfortunate that we're not going to see him in the Xfinity Series next year. That would have been really nice.
I do wonder if we're going to see like a Chandler Smith or something get that right, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah, we'll talk about that maybe over the off season when we have a chance or something like that. But congratulations to Ben Rhodes on a successful championship. Congratulations to Daniel Hamrick on a very impressive showing at Phoenix and season-long consistency. And of course, congratulations to Kyle Larson on an unbelievable Cup Series campaign that will go down as one of the greatest seasons of all time. So any final thoughts, Kyle, before we wrap up the episode? Our weekend review for the championship, the final weekend of this current generation of car. It's been a fun one, start to finish. We didn't have any interruptions this season. We've done basically every single weekend, kind of previewing it this year, which is crazy to think. But it's a long season, and I'm happy that we've stuck it through it and got to this point.
Yeah, it was a fun season. There was a lot of really strong races. There was a lot of fun things to look ahead to with the schedule shakeup and going into races, not really knowing how things would go or who would come to the top. So a fun year overall. And I think the playoffs really lived up to expectations when you look at what they're designed to do, when you look at some of the animosity that was built up, some of the drivers that were on cut lines, some of the drivers that were eliminated, all these kind of things shaped up to be a really, really strong season for NASCAR here to round out this generation of cars. So a lot of unknowns going into next season. Not only do you have a completely new car for the Cup Series, but you've got new bodies in the Truck Series as well. So it's going to be a lot of different looking stuff going into next season, a lot of new drivers and new places as well. So shaping up to be a really, really fun season next year. A lot of stuff that we don't know yet, specifically at the Xfinity and Truck Series levels. We basically know what the Cup Series grid is going to look like, with the exception of like what the Rick Ware cars are going to be with their new Stewart Haas alliance there, and who's going to fill those seats, and then additionally who's going to fill the 38 at front row. But outside of that, we basically know everything else. Xfinity trucks still pretty wide open, but good year overall. Some good racing, some great moments, 3 deserving champions in different ways that you can look at it, but 3 great stories at the end of things. Looking forward to next season to get things back underway in about 2 weeks time, because that's how short the NASCAR calendar or off season is. Like, you've got an off season test or next gen test again this week, I'm pretty sure. And you've got the Coliseum race at like the beginning of February. Like, it's like they get like barely 2 months off.
Yeah, it's going to be a quick turnaround for these guys. And with that, we only have one motorsport left that we cover on this show, F1, and that continues this weekend.
I mean, Petit Le Mans this weekend, but we don't usually do IMSA stuff. But
no, not really. But for F1,
also Supercars is back, and I am pumped about that. But that's a whole different thing.
Your sleeping schedule is just off the charts, man.
It's night. Okay, they're doing the Sydney Super Sprint stuff. I know we're getting deep in the woods here, but they're doing the Sydney Super Sprint stuff. So it's 1 day race, 1 night race. So there's one race that's like actually watchable because it's at like 11 or midnight, and then the other one is just like 4 a.m. So it's impossible. But December, Bathurst 1000, I'm going to be watching the whole thing and can't wait for that. So.
All right. But like I said, F1 coming down to the end of it. Verstappen, Hamilton, still close, but Verstappen's last 2 race weekends.
Not as close as our battle, though.
No, that's the one I'm really looking forward to.
Man.
When it comes down to it, if I lose by 0.5 of a point.
See, I just want to match you the whole time so I can win by 0.5.
That would be my season summed up in literally numbers.
It's going to come down to how we use our mega driver, if we're being honest.
And we'll try and talk about it as much as we can, but with school and everything like that, we're just kind of limited with that. But we're going to break down the season.
In a couple of weeks, we might be able to, when our practice comes over and stuff, and maybe we'll be able to pick it up then. But we'll see. The episodes will be few and far between a little bit over the next little bit here. So apologies for that, but we've done our best. 2 to 3 weeks probably. But then after that, when exam schedule comes out, because we're in a bit of a university program that is not like a university program in terms of the exams and stuff we have to do. No. So when it comes around to that, it'll also coincide with, I believe, the last either round or 2 rounds, depending on when the actual schedule starts. So at the very least, we'll have one for Abu Dhabi at the end of the season, but maybe also one for Saudi Arabia, depending on how schedules go. But yeah, if the track is even complete by then, who knows? I mean, but it's been a fun NASCAR season from start to finish, Kyle. And we'll try our best next season, everybody, with school and everything like that. We'll see what we can with maybe weekly uploads, or if that's not possible, we'll try and stay as up to date as we can. We'll get them in when we can, essentially. Exactly. And we'll just play it by ear. Next year is next year's problem. We'll still finish out this season. The important thing is that if we don't have an episode up, you can always catch our lineups and everything like that in terms of fantasy updates over on Instagram and whatnot, which plug. Yes. Follow us on Instagram at the Green Flag Pod, as well as Twitter at the Green Flag Pod. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, please. And thank you. We'd really, really appreciate it. All the links to our social channels will be in the description of the video. Make sure to give the like on our championship recap episode here as well, if you enjoyed it. And we'll give NASCAR and TSN one last plug here for this season, because good season. I'm proud of my stuff. I'm proud of what I did, and I'm looking forward to going out and starting off strong, maybe next year with a possible Daytona 500 appearance. Who knows? But that would be a dream of mine to go visit that. So that would be something pretty special, and we'll see how it comes down. And season's not over I should say the year's not over for us as well. We'll hopefully have some fun year-end stuff like we did last year again. This time around, we'll have to figure out timeline of all that kind of stuff, but I think we'll be able to do that no problem. So maybe the award show comes back again this season. The award show is definitely coming back with some increased followers here on Instagram and stuff like that. Maybe we'll get some more interaction, some poll votes and stuff like that. So we'll definitely have some exciting content, and then we'll maybe do some more tier list stuff and all that stuff maybe over the off season. Who knows, if we just have some time. But for this episode, I've been Lucas Flacker. He's been Kyle Cushman, signing off for now. We'll talk to you when we talk to you next, folks. It's been a pleasure the entire season. Thank you so much for subscribing, for liking our stuff, for watching our content. We really, really appreciate it. And hopefully the F1 season finishes with a bang. So we'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for watching and enjoying our content the entire season.